Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, air, restoration, and flood services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit BillHowe.com. And by the Conrad Trebas Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. By viewers like you. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Thousands of people are filling downtown for the first day of ComicCon, but we begin tonight with new developments in the cross-border pollution crisis. KPBS reporter Thomas Fudge has more on what's being called a 100% permanent solution to the long-standing problem.
EPA Chief Lee Zeldin spoke over Zoom from Mexico City. That's where he and Mexican officials signed a memorandum of understanding promising funding and follow-through on sewage treatment improvements. Zeldin visited San Diego in April. He toured treatment plants and says he smelled the same foul smell of sewage that San Diegans have been putting up with. The MOU outlines numerous goals. They include doubling the treatment capacity at South Bay's International Wastewater Treatment Plant by 2027. Zeldin says the EPA wants to speed up the pace of completing sewage treatment projects.
To get over the finish line a number of specific projects that are necessary to truly achieve a permanent 100% solution.
Environmentalists and former Imperial Beach Mayor Serge Dedina told KPBS he's encouraged by the news, but he says he won't celebrate until all of our beaches from Imperial Beach to Coronado are open 365 days a year. Thomas Fudge, KPBS News.
And now to our other top story. Day one of ComicCon is here as thousands flock to downtown for the pop culture extravaganza. And that is where we will find KPBS's Alexander Wen live on the convention floor. Alex.
Whether you're coming of the con experience is to have just clean out our games.
The day started off promising. The first person we bumped into was Superboy Connor Kent, or as he's known on this earth, Sam Carter.
That is over there.
It's his first Comic-Con, and so far he's been blown away by the experience.
I've always wanted to come here. It's interesting. There's a lot more booths and stuff than what they show on the internet.
He was only able to get a one-day pass.
We had a game plan and we saw most of it. I've already gone to the Crunchyroll booth, the Tamagotchi booth, the Capcom booth, Studio Viz.
First day game plan for me, it's typically trying to hit as many exclusives that you can get to.
For Jose Sanchez, who is cosplaying as San Diego native Rey Mysterio, as a wrestling fan, the day started on a somber note with the passing of Hulk Hogan.
He was important to the impact of wrestling, so it is hard to hear about a legend like that passing away.
Look at the way he's gliding. Look at his neck muscles.
As our search for Superman continues, we bumped into Clark Kent or Eddie Cifuentes.
Sometimes I don't come in with a game plan, but today I just wanted to take a look and see if there's any like Superman-related merch because the movie just came out.
But the search for Superman continues, and finally, success.
I'm actually Eradicator Superman.
But so close.
Just because it's my first year, I'm trying to experience as much as I can, keeping an open plan, seeing whatever pops up along the way.
The first year, you kind of come in not knowing what to expect, but now when we have water, we have snacks.
Finally, success. We found Superman.
Superman's booth is here. That was really the only thing we wanted to make sure and stop by and see.
We've had a really pleasant week, at least on midsummer standards. Even in the deserts, temperatures have been hedging below average, thanks to a bit of an extra onshore breeze coming in off the Pacific, and that's been carrying inland here. Overnight tonight, we're going to get down to the low 50s in places like Ramona, 61 in El Cajon. Along the coastline, mid-60s into San Diego. And really, Friday looks pretty comfortable. Spotty storms sway to the north up into the Sierra. We'll get a little farther down the line in our full forecast coming up.
A recent KPBS investigation found a spike in dog euthanasias at San Diego County-run animal shelters. In part 2 of this series, reporter Scott Rod says the euthanasia of one dog in particular caused turmoil among staff.
I recently visited Jeannie Miller and her 2 dogs at her home in Carlsbad.
This is Buttercup. She is pure Great Dane. She weighs about 152 pounds, and she's about 5.5 years old. Wesley is a mix of a terrier of some sort, and he is about 10 years old.
Miller prefers to get her pets from shelters.
I like it because they seem to know that you're rescuing them, it's their second chance.
Miller, for years, has wanted a Great Pyrenees. They're these big, fluffy dogs that are bred to guard livestock. Miller has a chicken coop.
We have had coyotes come into the yard, and I've lost chickens to the coyotes, and so I just wanted something, or a dog, to scare them off.
Late last year, Miller dropped by the animal shelter in Carlsbad, which is run by the San Diego County Department of Animal Services. And that's when she found 4-year-old Franklin sitting quietly in a kennel.
There he was, a Pyrenees, and I'm going, what are you doing here? Not barking, just kind of very calm. He took a treat from us. You could tell he had a good disposition.
The shelter told Miller that Franklin had been adopted and returned before. The Great Pyrenees had growled at one of the family members and was territorial around food. He also, on a couple occasions, tried to nip, a less serious kind of bite that's typically playful or attention-seeking. But Miller wasn't worried. She took Franklin home that day, and he did what Great Pyrenees are bred to do.
Just would walk around the yard and just kind of patrol the backyard, and then come back and go inside.
However, Buttercup wasn't so keen on Franklin. The Great Dane kept barking and growling at the new dog. Franklin ignored Buttercup. Yet Miller sensed an untenable situation. She felt she had no choice but to take Franklin back.
It was pulling at at me like, don't take him. No, you gotta take him back so he has a chance to get a home where he's going to fit in.
The next day, Miller made a pit stop on her way to the shelter.
I went through the drive-in at Jack in the Box, and I got 2 hamburgers, just the bun and the burger. And I got those for him, and then I took him to the beach, down to the beach, and we just walked for a little bit so he could have some free time.
Miller arrived at the shelter and an employee led Franklin into the back. She tearfully filled out the return paperwork. Quote, "Good boy. Very nice," she wrote. Miller explained to the front desk employee that she only brought Franklin back because her Great Dane reacted negatively.
The lady assured me that, with the review, he was going to be adoptable. And, people will probably adopt him sooner, quicker, because there's a good review.
But this was an empty reassurance. Franklin was euthanized that afternoon, likely while Miller was still standing at the front desk, and possibly before her feedback was even entered into the shelter's computer system, our reporting found. Miller only heard about the shelter euthanizing Franklin when KPBS contacted her.
He was a great dog. Yeah. So I don't see why, what happened had to happen. And who made that decision? That wasn't fair to him at all.
An employee decided Franklin had an untreatable behavioral issue. His euthanasia fits a troubling pattern. A recent KPBS investigation found the dog euthanasia rate at San Diego County-run animal shelters has more than doubled in recent years. KPBS spoke to nearly a dozen former employees and volunteers who claim the county routinely puts down dogs with mild behavioral issues, dogs that could have been rehabilitated with reasonable training. KPBS confirmed Franklin Franklin's euthanasia upset a number of employees, in part because the shelter broke its own rules. Franklin's paperwork shows he should have been held for several days after his return. If the shelter followed this rule, Franklin would almost certainly still be alive.
I felt really guilty, and that's why we went back. Like, I think it was like 2 days later. Yeah, we went back. We go, that's it. Let's make it work, you know. And he was gone.
The County Department of Animal Services declined our interview request. County spokesperson Chuck Westerheide said in a statement, quote, "The dog was not eligible to go back into the shelter population because he could not be safely adopted." Miller doesn't buy the county's explanation. She believes the shelter made a terrible mistake putting Franklin down. But she has her own regrets, too. On the day Miller returned Franklin, a shelter employee was about to throw away a photo from the dog's file. Miller wanted to keep it. I asked her why.
To remind me that not to, if I'm going to save a life again, to make sure that I save it fully and not jeopardize them, you know, going back. You know, he shouldn't have been put down.
Scott Rodd, KPBS News.
KPBS journalist Lainey Alfaro contributed to this investigation. If you have a tip for KPBS's investigations team, you can send an email to investigations@kpbs.org, or you can message them on our secure signal line at the number on your screen, 619-594-8177.
I'm Amna Nawaz. Tonight on the NewsHour, aid groups issue a dire warning that children are on the verge of mass starvation in Gaza. That's coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
The San Diego Central Library is hosting panels throughout ComicCon weekend for educators and librarians. KPBS education reporter Katie Anastas spoke to panelists who say comics can foster a love of reading and storytelling for all ages.
Peter Carlson brought comics to his classroom library nearly 20 years ago. Pretty soon, he says, students were bringing their siblings and friends over to the shelves.
It's not just like, oh, they like comics, but this is a community of, and culture of literacy that they're organically building. And what we just enabled was some resource and space to both dive into it, but then communicate about it. And those natural analytical skills were starting to develop in some very hesitant readers.
On Wednesday, he and Portland State University professor Susan Kirtley led a panel for other teachers looking to teach about, with, and through comics.
And I think that often people will assume that it's so much easier to teach a comic, when in fact they're very complicated texts, because you need to think about what is the image doing, what is the text doing, what are they doing together and apart, and what's happening between the panels.
And while superhero comics first drew her to the medium as a kid, today there's so much more than that.
There are nonfiction comics about recovering from cancer. There are nonfiction comics about climate change, but there are also fantastic sort of romances and action stories and science fiction. All age levels, every topic. There really is something for everyone.
Along with reading comics, creating comics can help students tell stories in new ways. Comic artist and professor Nick Suzanis says his art allows him to think in ways he couldn't without it.
And I see that for every single one of my students. Not because they came because they're great illustrators or whatever. It's because they're able to access something about how they think, which doesn't always fit into left, right, left, right, left, right.
He says teachers looking for comics to bring into their classrooms can visit comic book shops, look around, and ask what kids are liking. Just like any other piece of media, Carlson says teachers should think about what they want their students to learn and feel.
Anything can be grade level rigor depending upon the question sets that you've prepared and the tasks that you're putting in front of students.
Teachers and librarians interested in learning more can attend panels at the San Diego Central Library throughout ComicCon weekend. Katie Anastas, KPBS News.
San Diego Central Library is also a place where people can go to work on their costumes. A cosplay repair station is open on the 4th floor inside a space known as the Idea Lab. Sewing supplies, 3D printers, irons, and glue guns are some of the items available to use, and they are all free of charge. We found someone who was putting the finishing touches on her very first cosplay outfit.
I think it's really great. I think it's really great that people can just come here and do a bunch of these things that they wouldn't really have done otherwise. Maybe they didn't have like the resources at home. And I think the community here is really great. So I'm really happy that this is here.
Staff say to bring your own materials if you need anything beyond just the basics. The Central Library is located on Park Boulevard within walking distance to the Convention Center. And while ComicCon is happening at the Convention Center, there's another comic and arts convention happening just a few blocks away. It is called Indigon, and it celebrates Native American culture. KPBS reporter Jacob Ayer says it's the first event of its kind in California.
Reaching back to ancestral stories, thousands of years old, people like historian and San Diego State University professor Ethan Benegas are sharing their native culture and traditions through comics.
It's truly an immersive experience here. It's literally like jumping into the comic.
At the La Jolla Historical Society, Benegas is displaying his recent double-sided comic book, Beyond Gaming and Our Past, Present, and Future, across the gallery walls. He says the comics challenge stereotypes and false narratives about Native history in California.
The mission period has not been taught correctly, and we have a page on that, Burning the Mission.
The stories are mixed with history lessons drawn from his own experience as a Kumeyaay, Luiseno, and Cupeño Native American. Benegas grew up on the Barona Reservation near Lakeside.
A lot of the reason why the comic looks the way it is I went to a Payon gathering ceremony in Barona and videotaped and filmed it and took pictures all over. My kids were there. That's why they made it in the comic, actually.
Now he'll share that work with an even greater audience as a panelist at ComicCon and the first ever Indigicon in California. He sees it as a launching pad for even more storytelling from indigenous communities.
We have not been able to tell our stories. We haven't been given the space in colleges and universities and media, on film especially.
So in this story, I created an uncolonized indigenous world.
Cheg Lowry is executive director of the Indigenous Futures Institute at UC San Diego. He's also a comic book author and panelist at both events.
Johnny Bear Contreras and I have presented at the last 4 years of the San Diego ComicCon. So each time he and I would present, we would work with different Native artists and writers from tribes, mostly in California.
He says that helped build momentum for Indigicon. Lowry is co-directing the event.
And so we invited 8 comic book artists and writers from tribes around the country.
He hopes this event inspires Native youth and educates Californians on tribal history and their cultural practices. It's taking place only a few blocks away from Comic-Con.
And we kind of wanted it to be at the same time as the main Comic-Con, just because there's lots of good energy, it's exciting. People are going to be walking around in cosplay. They're going to look in, they're going to see us in that building and hopefully just come on in.
Benegas says if you know your history, launching these comics and the Indigicon event is nothing short of a miracle.
It's just a great time to be alive. And I think of my dad and all the struggles the elders went through. And I know they would have loved to live to witness this moment.
Lowry hopes the artists from the event will become a close-knit family and that this will be the first Indigicon of many in the years to come.
When you have a strong family, you can do anything. Then you can be the superhero in your community and you can do amazing things because you have the strength of your family and your people within you.
Indigicon takes place Friday, July 25th and Sunday, July 27th at UC San Diego Park and Market in downtown San Diego. Jacob Ayer, KPBS News.
We've had some really pleasant weather here on midsummer standards, and it's seemingly always pleasant, at least most of the time, near the coast. But even the inland areas that are typically pretty steamy, and the deserts sweltering this time of the year. Temps have been hedging below historical averages, so we're looking pretty good out there. And it's been because of a pretty active breeze. It's been an onshore wind because of this area of low pressure aloft off the northern California coast. But that's been delivering this onshore breeze for many of us. Now, with that said, anytime there's wind in the absence of precipitation, there's fire dangers. That is still a concern for some of us. Be careful out there. And this weekend, and even on Friday through Saturday, there will be some scattered or spotty thunderstorms way to our north, way up into the Sierra. Not a local impact in San Diego County, but just something to be aware of if you happen to be traveling to the north, to maybe Yosemite National Park, for example. Tonight, down to 66, partly cloudy skies. We're looking really nice on Friday. Here's the green zone from around Yosemite all the way to the north up into the Siskiyou. Scattered or spotty thunderstorms, and it would be pleasantly warm in the Great Basin, but not that sweltering heat that we often face. Some of the biggest winners have been places like Fresno, for example, that are often in the upper 90s, hanging out closer to 90 in recent days. And as we look locally here, only 85 in Ramona, 80 into Escondido, mid-70s in San Diego and Chula Vista, Oceanside. Borrego Springs, typically a scorching place. Instead of 110, we're at 101. It is all relative, but we look pretty good out there. And up into Mount Laguna, only 69 degrees. So we're looking nice out there. Saturday, there's that additional thunderstorm chance, kind of similar to Friday, way to our north up into the Sierra. But pleasant weather holds on here for us. So for the coast, mid-70s. Hedging up to the upper 70s on Sunday, mostly sunny, mid-70s, looking good. There will be some morning clouds and afternoon sunshine. Inland areas here, another really nice, pleasant stretch. Temperatures around pretty easily to 80. Now, as we step into next week, it's kind of a reality check back into the mid to upper 80s. It is late July after all. But into the mountains we go, and here we find some cool air stuck in the 60s for a couple days. We will be warming up pretty decisively next week as we do hedge back up closer to our averages. And we kind of bottom out on Saturday in the deserts with a high in the double digits. That's a win, but 107 is lurking next Tuesday. For AccuWeather, I'm Jeff Cornish for KPBS News.
ComicCon International Independent Film Festival screens shorts and features through Sunday. KPBS arts reporter Beth Accomando says it highlights films that all take their cue from pop culture.
I'm here at ComicCon International at what I think is one of the best kept secrets. It's the ComicCon International Independent Film Festival. And all day on these 4 days, you can come here and watch movies fueled by fandom and passion and pop culture. And one of those films is The Hero in Us. And this is the filmmaker, Alex Stulak. And tell us what your film's about.
Thank you, first off, Beth, for having me and bringing me on. The Hero in Us is a reimagining of the founding story of the Friends of Jack Foundation from Mattapoisett, Mass. They're doing, the Friends of Jack, just to summarize, really works with child life specialists and helping fund underfunded pediatric programs, Boston Children's, Mass General, all that. So Jack was the initial individual child that went through this, and we thought, how can we get more people involved and connected to this organization? Why don't we make a superhero film? These kids that go through these medical journeys are regarded as superheroes. So we basically took Iron Man 2, which is the superhero that Jack so resonates with because, he has a shunt in his head, and we rebroke that. What if a superhero lost his superpowers and he had to reclaim his identity? At the same time, his mother, as a mother with a child in the hospital, has to go through this journey too as well and find her own strength. So we use a live-action animated blend to kind of go back and forth between the both stories. The animation really is reserved for the feeling of when your child's in the hospital, it doesn't feel real. And the live action, when you get back home and you're facing a new reality.
And you are also part of the panels that are part of this ComicCon International Independent Film Festival. So what is your panel going to be on?
Nonprofits and filmmakers, a powerful partnership. It's going to be Friday at 3:30, and we're going to talk about why filmmakers and nonprofits should team up together. So many times with nonprofits, we use these impact stories, and storytelling is so essential to marketing and bringing in new funds for nonprofit organizations. But now we need to take a step further. By using a film, you expand your reach. You can end up in festivals and talking on panels like this to carry out your mission. So just as important, filmmakers get access to marketing, which we desperately need too as well, built-in audiences, and funds and support that we desperately need to share our movies.
All right, well, thank you very much. And we also have one of the judges who is part of the festival, and this is Jasmine Alexia Jackson. And you were one of the judges this year. So what is that process like?
It was really cool. I got to watch everything before everyone else, and I get to judge alongside with some really cool people, like Ian Joyer, whose work I've admired like for years. So to see really cool up-and-coming filmmakers and original ideas, original thoughts, it's really exciting. I also used to intern for an independent film festival, so it was also a full circle moment for me.
And how would you define the personality of this festival?
It's like, man, it's all over the place. So I guess it's eclectic, and I guess it's also like freedom, because the stories are so personal, they're so deep, they're also like really fun, and they're also very adventurous. And I saw so many things, like from romantic horror to just even kind of like mashy, like loving montage, like 80s, to even like just black and white kind of like classic. So the range is free, and yeah, this film festival has its own freedom to it, just free to create, free to make stories, and just free to have fun.
All right, the festival is going to run through Sunday here at ComicCon International, and I'm Beth Accomando for KPBS News.
And stay with KPBS for more Comic-Con coverage throughout the weekend. Tomorrow on Roundtable, we'll find out what big news is expected out of Hall H this year. And you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Good night.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, air, restoration, and flood services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit BillHowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following: by viewers like you. Thank you.